Hello and welcome to Real Chat. I'm Sophie.
And I'm Mark.
Today we're reviewing The Bride. Is this as bad as so many critics are saying? Stay tuned to find out what we really thought.
The Bride draws its inspiration from Mary Shelley's early 19th century Gothic novel Frankenstein and the 1935 film Bride of Frankenstein, but reimagines the story through a modern lens. Directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal, the film centres on the creation of a companion for Frankenstein's monster, with Jessie Buckley and Christian Bale in the central roles.
While rooted in Gothic horror tradition, The Bride also engages with contemporary ideas about gender and autonomy. Set in the 1930s, the narrative explores the sexual politics within the Frankenstein myth, a woman literally created to satisfy the needs of a man. As Buckley's bride becomes aware of her own existence, the film raises questions about control, consent, and the expectations placed upon women, turning Shelley's cautionary tale about a creation into a provocative commentary on agency and patriarchal power. So, when the credits rolled, what was your immediate reaction?
My immediate reaction was, I've made it to the end and I thought it was a good film, just generally. That's not to say that I didn't have quite a few reservations, which I'll get onto at the end. But how did you feel about the film?
I agree. I really enjoyed the film. I thought it was great, and obviously I do have some issues with the film, but overall I thought it was much better than what the critics were saying about it.
Yeah, I noticed. I've just been on Rotten Tomatoes and it has almost exactly the same rating as Wuthering Heights. So The Bride is on about 59% and Wuthering Heights is on about 58%. I also thought it deserved a little bit more than that. But let's talk about the tone, the visual style. How did you feel about it?
I really enjoyed that aspect of the film. I thought that the bride was created as someone that's very recognizable and something that I see being quite an iconic look possibly in the future. Something that you'd probably see people doing Halloween costumes for.
Yeah,
that's something I really liked. I really liked the presentation of her. She was quite messy, but in quite a stylish way, if that makes sense. Yes, I quite liked that.
I found just the presentation of Jessie Buckley's bride was awesome. But I really loved the costume, the prosthetics on Christian Bale, the staples, the folds in his skin. And you really felt for him as well. You know, he wanted to hide himself because he was aware that people would be scared of him or would stare at him. And he was a really great character, I thought, because he exhibited a lot of pathos in the true sense of the word. You really felt sorry for him. And although he was something of a lonesome man, looking for a companion, you knew that there was this explosive violence within him, which did get revealed. Once his buttons got pushed, then he was off.
I definitely liked that aspect about the presentation of Frankenstein's creation, because I do think that was very accurate. I have read the book myself, Frankenstein, and I have watched Frankenstein 1931 and also The Bride of Frankenstein, and I think that Christian Bale's Frankenstein's creation was very accurate to the book. In the book he is very emotional and quite a sad, lonely creature, but also has this side of him where he is filled with so much rage and, seeks revenge against people who have hurt him, I guess, against the human race. But this film does it a little bit differently, but I think still does have those original aspects of the creation.
And of course, we have to say here, he's known as Frank in the film. This issue, as a kid, when I used to have arguments with people by saying he's actually the monster. He's not called Frankenstein. He's called he's the monster. And I was being a bit of a smart ass. And then eventually someone said to me, actually, you're wrong. He's the creature in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So how did you think Maggie Gyllenhaal did in reimagining the Frankenstein myth?
I think that she definitely did it in quite a unique and creative way.
Definitely.
And sometimes when people do that, it has a tendency to not quite be executed how they envisioned it. But I do think that she succeeded in what she was trying to explore in the film. I saw her talking about the film before I'd watched it, and she said that you can't make, I think, an adaptation of The Bride of Frankenstein or Frankenstein without exploring themes of consent. And I think she's absolutely right. You know, the bride of Frankenstein is brought back from the dead, like without her consent and only for serving the male figure. And I think that she does a good job in exploring those themes of consent and female autonomy.
And those ideas run all the way through the film.
All the way through the film, and they aren't hidden, and they're very overtly spoken. And I have seen a lot of criticism about how she wasn't quiet or like subtle about those kind of things. And in other films, I would understand not wanting the themes like blurted at your face, like, you know, and letting the audience like come up with their own ideas. But I feel like with this film, it's a bit of a different one, because what she was trying to do was not be quiet about these ideas. She wanted people to be uncomfortable and actually think about relating these issues to the modern world and thinking, you know, this is something that still happens today, and Frankenstein will always be relevant, and these ideas about the role of the female will always be relevant, and something that Mary Shelley had to be subtle about. But Maggie Gyllenhaal was like, no, we're gonna show everyone what I'm trying to say. I'm not gonna hint at it. I'm gonna say it, I think.
And yeah, it is a roller coaster, this film. It is loud, maybe a bit brash, certainly chaotic in places, but it's certainly not a nice, quiet, nuanced film. If you want to watch a nice, quiet, nuanced film, go and rent Sentimental Value. Do see our review first, of course. But I felt that Maggie Gyllenhaal is taking the audience into battle. And I'm afraid some of you are just not going to be there at the end. You know, it really is a roller coaster. I have to say, it nearly lost me in the middle section. But the good things for me were certainly its experimental nature, and by experimental by Hollywood standards, that is. And I really loved. I got into it right at the beginning with Christian Bale's character, the way Frank was played. It got me in, and then once it took off with Jessie Buckley, and she is a powerhouse in this film, a really strong, you know, a very loud performance as well. Once that kicked in, I went with it. But as I say, I nearly lost it in the middle bit with the song and dance routine.
Yeah.
But I will say this, I loved the way Frank has a love of the movies. He finds solace and understanding by going to the movies. And it really reminded me of Wall-E, you know, the robot Wall-E, because both of them watch song and dance movies, and both of them get a connection and an understanding of love. And I think in a way, in a small way, Maggie Gyllenhaal's doing that with this film. She's trying to teach us about relationships in the modern world. But yes, it's brash, it's in places, it's a little bit overcooked, and it's very much in your face. But I've got to say, I loved a lot of those particular elements. Now, I've got to be honest, is there anything that you found less pleasing, shall we say, about the film?
Probably Mary Shelley in the film. I wasn't a huge fan of the way they presented her and made assumptions about her. I understand why that choice was made, because in the Bride of Frankenstein film, Mary Shelley at the start is played by the Bride of Frankenstein that comes later in the film. So I understand why they had Jessie Buckley play those two roles. But I didn't like Mary Shelley in this film. I maybe I just didn't get it or something, but I didn't like how it made a lot of assumptions about what she was trying to do. And you can obviously find many feminist beliefs and arguments in the book, but to say what she exactly was trying to do is, I don't quite like that aspect.
Yeah, I have to say, I found it irritating as a device more than
Yeah.
anything. I was getting a bit confused. I mean, it was an incredible performance because
Yeah.
Jessie Buckley, one moment she's playing this role of Ida,
Yeah.
and then she suddenly goes into this British Mary Shelley,
Yeah.
and it's amazing to watch. But you kind of think, where the hell is this going, and
Yeah.
what's its purpose? And it kind of fizzles out during the film, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I suppose as the bride gets her identity,
Yeah.
and it's interesting about that. This is a film about identity, because she starts off as Ida, then she's made into the bride of Frankenstein,
Yeah.
but she adopts the name Penelope Rogers, and eventually she settles on the bride, and that's really, really important. Sums up the whole thing. Yes, problems with the film. I've got to say the good stuff outweighed the problems, but I do think, for me, the gender politics was a bit too, how can I put it, a bit too forceful and a bit too simplistic in places, and it grated a little bit. And I found that sort of came out with the incidental characters or the side characters. You've got Christian Bale, you've got Jessie Buckley, but we also have these detectives. We have Penelope Cruz and we have Peter Sarsgaard. And Penelope Cruz, she merely seems to serve a function of showing us that women are shouted at, they're talked over, and they're ignored. And when she says she's a detective, nobody believes her. And the Peter Sarsgaard character, at the end, he has his little speech, and it's kind of reminding us that yes, not all men are sort of misogynistic bullies, that they're not all sexual predators. Some men are, all right, or most men, maybe not all men, and of course the bride shouts out, "Me too, me too." And it's kind of, if it wasn't obvious at that point, it was really obvious by the end of the film. Have you got anything else that you?
All I'm gonna say is that I think the critics were too harsh on this film, and I do believe, and I'm rooting for this film in the long run and hoping that people see its like cult classic potential. I think this could be a great film and people are gonna look back and be like, wait, this film was nowhere near as bad as I thought. I'm hoping, at least. Yeah.
And yeah, so let's go for the scores then, and let's do this. Okay. Are we ready? Time for the scores. 3, 2, 1, go. Right then, I gave it an 8.
I gave it an 8.2.
An 8.2. Wow, we were remarkably close. Yeah, I thought that despite my reservations about the film, I thought the fact that it was so bold and experimental, it deserves to be seen in the cinema. See what the fuss is about. But we both really enjoyed it.
Definitely, yeah.
So then, thanks for watching, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.